Let's take a look what is the deadlock, lifelock, and the starvation in multi-threading Java. So first let's start with the deadlock. In the deadlock, so what we do here in this example, we are creating two objects, lock1 and the lock2. And what we do is we are also creating two threads, right? In the first thread, we have two synchronized block. In the first synchronized block, we are getting the first lock, and then we are putting that thread to sleep for 100 millisecond, and then we have another synchronized block where we have a lock 2 here. And in the same for the second thread, so what we have is we are acquiring a lock here in the first synchronized block, and then we are putting that thread to sleep, and then we have another synchronized block where we are using the lock 1. So in this case, what will happen is that the thread 2 will never release the lock 2, because we'll never be able to release lock 2 because here it's waiting for the lock 1, right? And the lock 1 is in another thread. Another thread holds the lock 1, and it also waits for the lock 2. So for the first thread waiting for the lock 1, second thread waiting for the lock 1, and the first thread waiting for the lock 2, and they are blocking each other. That's why we have here a deadlock situation. If we run this, as you can see here, if we run this, the first one holding a lock 1 and the second one holding a lock 2. So the second one waiting for the lock 1, which is held by the first thread, and the second thread waiting for the lock 1, and the first thread waiting for the lock 2, and they are blocking each other. How about the lifelock example, right? In the lifelock, what we have is we have opposite situation where each thread is giving a way to another thread to perform its function, but they cannot complete. Both of those threads cannot complete their work. So for example, in this situation, what we have is we have a worker class, and in the worker class we have two fields, right? We have the isActive, and we have the active, and also we have isActive, which returns us whether or not current worker is active. And in the work, we are checking that if active is true, then in that case we are checking for the other active that is passed as an argument here. And if that is true, then in that case we are giving away to another thread and setting that to false and finalizing it. So for example, let's take an example. I think it will be more clear. So we are creating here two workers, worker 1 and worker 2. So in the thread 1, we are starting work for the work 1, but we are passing as other second work, right? We are passing the worker 2 as the work to do here as an argument. And in the second one, we are starting for the second worker, we are starting a work, and as a work, we are passing the first one, right? So vice versa. So what happens is here for each one, right? Each one will check the active is true, and each one will check that the other is true. So other, which means that, for example, in case of the second one gives away for the first one to perform, right? Because other is set to true. But what will happen is first one will go to this thread, it will print giving away to the other thread to perform, and it will go to sleep for 100 seconds, and after that it will go to loop to check again. So basically they will never exit this loop, right? So they are giving away for each other to finalize their work, but because of we have here continue, and because of this loop, they will never able to set this flag to false. Let's run it and see that it's exactly works as we expected. As you can see here, they are just going into loop, give worker 2 giving way to worker 1, and the worker 1 giving away to worker 2, but they cannot complete their work. None of them can set their flag to false. So that's the situation where we have a lifelock. This is the real case situation that we may have in some cases. So we need to be careful to reorganize our work, not to have live lock situation. And the last one we have is starvation. In the starvation, what happens is, let's say we have several threads. One of the threads get assigned. So for example, in this case, we have two threads, right? High priority and the low priority, and they are running indefinitely. So here, what we do is for the high priority, we are setting the priority to maximum, and low priority, we are setting to minimum. So what will happen is that low priority thread either will not get any chance to run, or it will get a little chance to run. So let's run it and see. So as you can see here, it's a mostly high priority, and the low priority thread gets a little chance to run. So mostly it runs the high priority thread consume all the resources. So that's an example of the deadlock, lifelock, and the starvation in multithreading Java.